Sunderland took the initiative again. It may be tactless, but one must recall the 1953 transfer of Billy Elliott from Burnley to Sunderland, for it was he who scored 6 minutes from the end to put Sunderland through.
It's round the full-back. Shot it upstairs, it's goal! McGibbon heading it on for Watson, clear by Burrows. Now Coleman in, flicked on, here's the chance for Jewett, yes!
Turn Fennick. It's a crossing. Cummins. Rowell. 1-0. Gary Rowell does it again. Coming again from Gray. Phil Gray knocking it off. And Goodman. Goodman here with a chance. 1-0 to Sunderland. It's John Goodman again. It's model the crossing machine. Another dangerous ball in. And it's a third. Alex Johnston's first as well.
On Tuesday, the 13th of May 1997, Sunderland fans finally said farewell to Roker Park. The last ever match was against Liverpool, their first opponents 99 years before. When the turnstiles clicked for the last time, hearts were heavy with more than just nostalgia. 48 hours before, Sunderland had suffered its 7th relegation. And with a new stadium beckoning, none of the previous 6 hurt more. But Roker Park summoned up one last display of its indomitable spirit for the great send-off.
There's Billy Bingham, former Northern Ireland international, Northern Ireland manager of course as well. He came to Wearside from Glentoran back in October 1950, went on to play more than 200 league games for the Wearsiders. A very sprightly looking Billy Elliott there marching out. 193 games he played, England international, and of course he went on to manage the club as well. This will be the biggest cheer of the night. The man they voted Sunderland's player of the century. It's the legendary Charlie Hurley. They signed him from Millwall, and the Roker Park crowd really took him to their hearts.
People that are applauding today are the fans that followed me, not maybe them, but their fathers and their fathers were here at Roker Park, and it's a happy time in certain respects for myself because I was here in the 60s and the fans are, in my opinion, the best in the game.
George Hurd there, who has the distinction of being the first man to score a goal as a substitute. Went on to be a coach here, a very well-known figure in coaching circles within the North East. There's Bobby Kerr down there with the FA Cup that he held aloft so proudly in 1973. He was a fantastic midfield player, a real inspiration there. A really tremendous player, a mighty atom. Well, it takes some man who can wear the black and white stripes into cup final glory and then make Roker Park his home. But Bob Stoker, one of the men who's managed to cross the bridge, as it were, between Newcastle and Sunderland, and a real hero here, an inspirational manager.
It's very emotional, just like, you know, coming back and reliving the last 20-odd years. It's just as sad that it's all over, you know. There'll never be anywhere like Roker Park for me in the future.
We're getting through to the modern era now. That's Sean Elliott. There's a few good defenders out there tonight. Local lad from Hayden Bridge, who was one of the new brigade brought in to the team alongside Gary Rowell. Charlie Hurley was one of the great defenders at Roker Park. This man, one of the goal-scoring legends. Gary Rowell, a local lad signed from Sean Juniors in June 1975, and a real crowd favourite with a natural touch for goal.
It's lovely to be associated and to be here tonight. It brings back many happy memories for me. Seven years, and I honestly feel Sunderland made my name as a footballer and helped me to have the career that I had, and it's a great pleasure to be associated tonight.
Martin Scott down there from the current playing staff, of course, had a nightmare season with injuries, and his skill at fullback has been sorely missed by Peter Reid. Looking as though he enjoys the evening tonight, though.
It was just the farewell party the great old ground deserved. Unashamed emotion all the way, but the last time the team would take the field. The last kick-off. Every last moment of action on the pitch, cheered and savoured. And as Roker Park had always done, all the crowd really wanted was the last Sunderland goal.
Looking forward now for Mullin, who's got to turn in. That's a goal. John Mullin tucked that one away really impressively. Appreciative applause from Roker Park's farewell crowd.
So to John Mullin, a place in history. The man who scored the last goal at Roker Park. Sunderland 1, Liverpool 0. The same scoreline as that very first match. Nothing really had changed in 99 years. A farmer named Tennant used to grow turnips on the land where Roker Park was built. When Sunderland's first chairman John Potts Henderson made the bold decision to build a new ground, he had to support a major housing scheme around it. Mr. Henderson agreed to pay the ground rents till the houses were sold. The chairman was determined the club must move forward and leave its previous ground at Newcastle Road. On the 10th of September 1898, this Sunderland team beat Liverpool 1-0 in front of 30,000 fans. The new stadium had been completed in less than a year. The new ground had seats for only 2,000 fans. There was no concrete, it was all wood with the terraces 9 inches a step to make sure every fan had a decent view. On match days, the Weir ferry had to operate with an additional steamboat to carry more than 3,000 extra passengers on the more direct route from the town's east end. The club had another championship under its belt by the time it bought the ground outright in 1905 for a cost of £10,000. The present Roker End was built in 1912, though only part of it has survived. £20,000 was spent building an elaborate construction of concrete pillars which lasted for 70 years before the upper sections were demolished for safety reasons. The design also gave players somewhere to train during wet weather. Roker Park could afterwards hold 50,000. You can see from the background of these player pictures how Roker Park looked. Behind Charlie Parker, a 1920 signing from Stoke, the forward end is quite clear, with Sandringham Terrace plainly showing. Goalkeeper J.B. Dempster stands in front of a Roker End that wasn't to change for 60 years. And this is how Roker Park looked in 1920, but it's not Sunderland who are playing. The newsreel cameras were on Wearside as Roker Park staged an international between England and Ireland. It wasn't quite as spectacular as the first international between these two countries, staged at Roker 6 months after it opened. In 1899, England had come to Wearside and turned in a record score of 13-2. This victory was by a more modest margin of 2-0. As you can see behind this rather casual team photo, the forward end was initially built with wooden planks. The safety aspects are not worth thinking about. In 1925 it was rebuilt using a newer material, concrete. In 1929 the present main stand was built, which, together with other improvements, added a further 10,000 to the capacity. The stand was designed by the famous Scottish architect and engineer Archibald Leach. To the very last, his work was instantly recognisable by the unmistakable criss-cross steelwork on the front of the stand. It matched his previous work at Ibrox and Goodison Park, except this time he could use red paint instead of blue. The cost of the work was £25,000. The 30s saw some huge crowds shoehorned into Roker Park. 4 times the attendance rose above 60,000. Here's the great Bobby Gurney scoring, with the corner of the original clock stand in the background. In 1936, that stand was demolished. Again, the club turned to Archibald Leach for one of his last major works. More than 15,000 fans could be accommodated on 2 levels, all standing, of course. In 1939, Roker staged the FA Amateur Cup final, with Bishop Auckland beating Willington 3-0. The stadium's basic look wasn't to change that much for the next 60-odd years. Football soldiered on during the Second World War, Roker Park itself escaped unscathed until March 1943. 2 bombs fell, destroying the clubhouse, which stood on the corner of the Roker end. Roker was only the 2nd ground in the First Division to have floodlights installed in December 1952. It led to a series of night matches which produced their own special atmosphere. This was perhaps the most prestigious of all, against Moscow Dynamos in 1955. Though Sunderland went down to a late goal from the Russians.
Shackleton, number 11, who had been put on the wing, was frequently prominent and worked away like anything. Perhaps he should have been on the inside. Anyway, Dynamo not only beat off all Sunderland raids, they had the best of the game throughout. But it was 3 minutes from time when they scored the winner through Ilyin. That was it. Dynamo retrieved some of their reputation and, well, thanks for the game.
Roker Park progressed even further on the international scene when it was chosen as a venue for the 1966 World Cup. It required extensive upgrading, starting with a roof on the Fulwell end. The original clock, which gave the stand its name, was to be a victim of the World Cup. It had to go to make way for a TV gantry. And behind the main stand, new offices and executive facilities were built to give Roker Park the look that was to last it the rest of its days. The new-look Roker was ready on schedule. Temporary seating had been installed in the paddock in front of the main stand and in the newly covered Fulwell end. Even the pitch was extended by 3 yards to bring it up to World Cup requirements. Roker shared Group 4 with Ayresome Park. Here the Italian fans have taken temporary control as their team put paid to Chile. But Italy were to go out, with Russia staying in the region to play their quarter-final against Hungary. The Roker Stadium certainly gave value over the years, but by the start of the 80s, the pre-First World War construction at the Roker end was starting to show distinct signs of wear. It was reduced to its present size in 1982 with the loss of 10,000 to the capacity. In its final safety-conscious years, exit facilities were constantly improved, but Roker's capacity fell to less than 23,000. In the first years of Roker Park, the town of Sunderland was at the forefront of the rapidly expanding game of association football. In their first 5 years in the league, Sunderland had won the championship 3 times. The team of all talents had put Wearside on the map.
They brought pride to the town, and also they brought sort of the game of football in a big way. It was a bonus. The town had never had this. And but it reverberated throughout the northeast, and really, this became one of the great nurseries of the game.
Ironically, it was Tom Watson who'd led Sunderland to their first 3 championships, who prevented Roker Park marking the new century's first full season with another title. Watson had left Wearside 2 years before the move to Roker, and his new club Liverpool edged out his old in 1901. The next season, the club's 4th First Division title was the first to be located at the new ground. The fans had to wait another decade for more glory, but it was to prove Roker's most astonishing campaign.
They had an amazing season in 1912-13 when they only got 2 points from their opening 7 games, yet won the championship with a record number of points and very nearly did the double. Aston Villa beat them 1 out at Crystal Palace.
Football at Roker Park between the wars was obviously a very different experience. The team was rarely out of the top half of the First Division, and the ground itself was starting to take shape.
Roker End, see, people came from the east end of the town and that end of the town. They all made over the ferry boats and came onto Roker Park up the side streets. Full End seemed to be from the colliery district. It worked out something like that. They were the same type of supporters, same good supporters, good people and all that.
There was a lot of quietness. You could pass this ground as you could pass any of the big grounds with 50,000 in, and unless there was something exciting happened, you wouldn't have known, you know, because people watched very much, particularly in the opening, the way they'll watch the first round of a boxing match, you know, weighing up. And that's what they did. They would weigh up the opposition in particular. And there was a lot of informed comment then.
You could go anywhere in either end and stand and watch the match. No trouble. If there was any trouble between any lunatic, like you get nowadays, if you came, the crowd would say, yeah, outside, and finish it up there, outside, if you like, and bet your life $1. The two of them would come back and they're shaking hands in hour. So that's the only tough you had.
And if there was any bad language, not that it was extreme, I think a damn, you know, would be bad language. There was always a voice who would say, what's your language there? Ladies present? Football fever took hold, and it gripped the town, and it was obvious that the town was just about going to close down. And then long before the match started, I realized that I was in danger, because what I was doing, I was then lifted an inch or so off the ground, and I couldn't move my arms, and the crowd began to sway. And what I was terrified, of course, was falling, but one couldn't fall because we were so packed. But nevertheless, there would be times when the surging was so strong that there would be breaks, you know. And if you fell, that would be it, I'm afraid, you know. No one could have helped you. It was an absolutely miserable, dewy game, you know. Derby knew all about Sunderland's remarkable forwards, you see. And they were a tough lot, Derby. And they went to extra time, and a fellow called Ramage scored for them, scored for Derby, so Derby won 1-0. And this vast crowd, you know, trooped away silently, so disappointed.
But the club was on the brink of its best spell of the interwar years. In 1936, Sunderland stormed to their 6th title, winning the league by 8 points, scoring 20 more goals than any other team. Sunderland finally won that elusive FA Cup the following year, after just one home draw, though Roker staged 2 replays. It was a couple of years later before manager Johnny Cochran called a halt after his 11 seasons in charge. He was the only Sunderland manager to win the Cup and the Championship. He gave Roker Park its last great period of supremacy.
Charlie, he was very tall, a military man. He'd had a commission on the show at Foresters during the First World War, and he'd been in the Guards before that. And he didn't look as if he could participate in the rough and tumble of the game, but of course he could. He was a remarkable header, and also he was a close dribbler, sort of sidestepping, just stepping about in small areas. I think he was probably sort of, over the years, Sunderland's greatest player.
Do I take it that it's not working? There's a turnstile operator there.
For the past 25 years, this has been Fred Bailey's home. A stadium manager, he's looked after the ground and the fans who've come through the doors. Following Sunderland has been a family tradition, and when Roker Park goes, so will a large chunk of Fred Bailey's past.
To a lot of supporters, when this goes, it's taking a part of their life away, you know. Certainly be taking a big chunk of mine away, because I've been so closely connected with it. But also, I identify this place, you know, with my granddad and my own dad, God love him, who worked for this club as a match day employee for many years. But I mean, I can picture just behind me up in the forward wing in the front row, I could turn around and visualise my granddad sitting up there with his cigar, looking over there, because he was in the front row and I would be in the forward end as a little boy. And my dad, I mean, I could picture him walking around this place, because 12 years ago since he passed away. So once this place goes, then you haven't got that sort of place to identify them with.
It's a few years since one lady last passed through the turnstiles, but from her flat in Sandringham Terrace, just a throw-in from the full end, Barbara Rooney lets everyone know where her loyalties lie.
I've got to have her in the window on match day. She only has red and white ribbon on now, but you can hear it all. And there's somebody bangs one of these doors or something at the top inside the ground, and it's like a drum going on all the time. It's lovely. I love to hear it. And to see all the crowds coming. That's a friend. And she used to go to all the football matches. That's how I get to know so many people, just sitting here and watching.
For news of what's happening in the rest of the football world, there's only one place where the fans look. It's the best view in the ground. It's also one of the noisiest.
Probably is the only hand-reared scoreboard in the, well, certainly in the Premier League, maybe through the first and second divisions as well. I mean, look at it, you know, it's really archaic. It's old hat, isn't it? We get the half-time scores through either headphones or through the telephone on the end there, and then we just literally put them in.
The main thing is at half-time, when the half-time whistle goes, the whole ground looks up to the first score, which is always Newcastle's score. And if we can get a Newcastle score where they're getting beat at half-time, the ground just erupts, you know.
That's right. And sometimes we'll have a little bit of a fiddle around with the score to make it a bit more exciting.
Yeah, we do lie to the supporters occasionally just to make it fun, you know. We always end up putting the right score in.
Rashcott is clearly the finest player I ever saw play for Sunderland. He was my boyhood idol. Thought the world of him. When he came on leave from the RAF and played for Sunderland in wartime football, that's when I first watched Sunderland play. It was always a special occasion. Amazing ability. He did great things very simply, and he did them so consistently. And when, as a 9-year-old, you see your hero you've read about and heard your dad talk about score a hat-trick in a 7-1 win over Leeds United, well, it does endear you to him.
Roker Park got back to football life after the war, the team resumed its accustomed place in the First Division. Attendances were huge, but the coming years were to bring wild fluctuations in fortunes. Sunderland were increasingly looking to buy their way to success. Trevor Ford cost £30,000 from Aston Villa in October 1950. A month later, he scored twice for Wales against England in the last full international to be played at Roker. The cup was to prove a constant frustration, with the team so often missing out in the final stages. In 1951, 65,000 fans saw Norwich swept aside in the fifth round.
Davis lobs a high one. Nethercott fumbles and it's over the line to put Sunderland 1 up. A nice gesture from skipper Fuchs as he consoles his unhappy goalie. Billy Watson's playing a fine game. There he goes, working his way through. He shoots and it's a goal. And another Tommy Wright movement. The wingers played a key man part in Sunderland's attack. He's through and there goes a shot to put Sunderland 3 up.
Sunderland confirmed their status as the Bank of England club when they paid £70,000 for 3 internationals, including Billy Elliott from Burnley. This goal against his old club sent Sunderland off on yet another cup run in 1955. When Wolves came to Roker in the 6th round, Wearside was convinced glory was on its way.
Wolves are in danger again as Ted Purden gets the ball. He shoots and there it is. Sunderland 1 up. Off they go again with only 2 minutes play left. Purden has it and in goes number 2 for Sunderland. Wolverhampton Wanderers, the mighty team who licked the Hungarians and the Russians, are out of the cup.
But Sunderland were to miss out in the semi-final, as they were again the following campaign for the 7th time. Going to the match was a way of life for so many thousands, but in the 50s, the maximum wage of £15 a week meant there were no superstars on the pitch. Players and fans would quite literally walk side by side, especially to Roker.
I used to take a shortcut through the railway crossing and walk into Roker Park and walk back.
And were the fans with you all the time?
Oh yeah, yeah. Great fans, aren't they? You know, I tell people away from the northeast how loyal and how brilliant the fans are, and they don't believe me, you know. And I said that if Newcastle or Sunderland had done what Liverpool have done or Man United have done over the last few years, there'd have been no getting in at Roker Park or St James's Park. You know, we've got better fans, more loyal than Man United and Liverpool.
What you could always say about Sunderland, certainly in those days, was that they tried to be successful. They tried so hard, they broke the rules. Or it was alleged that they broke the rules. I mean, people were kicked out of football, at least temporarily, after allegations that they broke the rules. But they tried to bring the best here, and really, in many ways, they did.
Burnley's Alan Brown was the new man who walked into Roker when that scandal led long-serving manager Bill Murray to resign. The side Brown inherited had finished 20th, but it was to get even worse. Argus in the Sunderland Echo told the next season's nightmare defeats. 7-0 at Blackpool was a shocker. The team were burned up at Burnley 6-0. They had no answer to Luton 7-1. A pasting at home from Blackpool again 4-1. And Birmingham battered them 6-1 at Roker.
There was players in the side who thought they were good players, and they only had to go on the field and perform. That's not football. That's not football for me. You've got to go out there, and when you put a red and white shirt on, you've got to die for Sunderland Football Club.
But Alan Brown had insisted he would need time to rebuild. He was a disciplinarian who preached coaching and developing players. It took 6 seasons before the club was back where Brown and the fans felt it had always belonged.
Nothing he couldn't do. I mean, with a football, with a tennis ball, with a ping pong ball, with an old coin, a penny piece, he could flick it, control it, and things like that. Flick it in his pocket, catch it on his instep. He could do anything. He was a genius, but a little bit difficult to play with at times.
We used to turn up early to see the kick-in because it was part of the entertainment. He could kick a ball 12 yards ahead, beckon it back, and he'd put so much bottom on it, it just came back to him. He could make it almost talk, and this is the old football.
Roker Park's early experiences of life outside the First Division were not particularly happy. The first 2 seasons down were a long rebuilding process when the club found it hard to keep clear of the threat of further relegation. The goals of Brian Clough were at the heart of Brown's transformation as Sunderland became a promotion force. In 1962, the team missed promotion on the last day, despite 29 goals from their £40,000 signing from Middlesbrough.
Now it's Hurd on the ball. A Clough. Yes, it's there, my word. Clough with a chance. Yes, it's there! A brilliant piece of opportunism by Brian Clough.
The cruelest blow came on Boxing Day 1962 against Bury. A collision with keeper Chris Harker ended one of the greatest goal-scoring careers Roker has ever seen. But it wasn't to be the last of Mr. Clough. With Brian Clough's goals, surely promotion would have been in the bag long before the last game of the season. But Sunderland could still have gone up if they drew their final match against Tommy Docherty's Chelsea. Tommy Harmer scrambled the only goal, and with it, promotion on goal average. Last match traumas were here to stay. But next season, it all came right for Alan Brown's team, who never looked like faltering. Just 1 defeat in the last 18 matches meant Sunderland could coast home, especially when third-placed Preston were crushed at Roker.
This time Hurd gets it stuck in, it's there! It's a goal! Sharkey flicks it in. And he's round the full-back. Sharkey knocks it in, it's a goal! A wonderful goal!
It could have been a promotion and cup double as Sunderland faced Manchester United. Roker Park was bursting for a 6th-round replay. Sunderland had been 3-1 up before drawing at Old Trafford. The crowd were near hysterical as the second division side again took the lead. But the goalscorer had been hard pushed to make the game.
We went down to the Roker Hotel for a meal before the game. And we thought, well, we'll just sort of amble up, you know, about 6 o'clock, you know, game's 7:30. So we all started off and that, and just up by the Roker Park itself. There's a bit of trouble. The few many people we didn't recognise, we didn't think there'd be so many people. And unfortunately, we couldn't get through. And this is trying to get into the actual players' entrance. And we spent about half an hour trying to persuade about, say, 20,000 people that we had to get through to get into change and to play the game. So it was later on we heard that there was about 60,000 in the ground, maybe 30,000 outside. We thought, God, there's about nearly 100,000 people here. And it was a fantastic night. Unfortunately, we didn't get a result.
It was Dennis Law who sent this epic game into extra time, but a Morissetter's own goal restored home advantage. Finally, it was Bobby Charlton who forced a second replay with just a couple of minutes left in extra time. But that match took its toll on Roker Park. The official attendance was nearly 47,000, but with an entrance collapsing, there could have been anything up to 70,000 inside, with even thousands more still outside. Manchester United reached the semi-finals after the third game, but Roker fans had the First Division on their minds rather than Wembley.
We had a million characters, you know, John Crossan, George Mulhall, with, you know, two jokers in the pack, and with so many different characters, very quiet lads, and we gelled together. And as a unit, I think we worked very well. Unfortunately, the thing that spoiled it for me was in the close season when we did get promotion, Alan Brown resigned, and sort of spoiled it for me, but otherwise, fantastic.
Alan Brown's resignation left Sunderland managerless for the first 3 months of the season. And for the first 3 matches, they kicked off with a record-breaking keeper. Derek Foster became the youngest player to appear in the First Division when he made his debut aged 15 years and 185 days. He'd been an apprentice for 2 months. By November, George Hardwick became manager. But the former England and Middlesbrough defender didn't last long, as Sunderland retained their First Division status, but without ever making any real impression. Still, Roker fans always had their idol Charlie Hurley to cheer. And when Ian McColl took over, he brought Jim Baxter to Sunderland. The fans just loved Slim Jim's style of play. The 60s saw some really loyal servants at the club, with players like Len Ashurst, who made 466 appearances. And there was Stan Anderson, who'd received his testimonial game in 1964 after 447 games. If only Brian Clough hadn't needed his own benefit match a year later, after injury had finished him, then maybe Sunderland's history might have taken a different turn.
Brian Clough himself is a person, fantastic person. He's a one-off. He's a man that called a spade, and used many nouns or adjectives to go with that as well. Great man, I love them. Great player, great manager, and just a super person.
They shipped over the finest turf from Ireland when Roker Park first opened for business. Almost 100 years later, and the playing surface was still one of the best in the country. For one man in particular, looking after the famous old pitch that he used to gaze at from the terraces, has been the original dream come true.
Love it, absolutely love it. Especially working for Sunderland Football Club, that's the main thing and all, like. Because I've been here since I was a little toddler, well on my father's shoulders, you might say. And I've seen some wonderful players here. And it's just tremendous to think you're working on the same pitch that they've graced. Although, mind you, we've put 600 tonne of roots on in this one, you know, it's still there, like. I mean, I love gardening, you know, I've always loved gardening, which my father did. He taught us everything and just took it from there. I think, you know, grass is a plant, a tremendous plant. You can kick it to bits and it'll come back again, you know. But just give it what it wants and, you know, that's it. You know, you look round, you just get a feeling, you know, it seems to overwhelm you. You've been involved, you know, for years and just brilliant, like.
It wasn't just going to the game itself that became part of the Roker ritual. Every ground has its favourite pub on the doorstep, but this one had a church as well. The Roker Methodist Tea Ladies were a match-day institution. Since 1962, they had religiously provided a different kind of service to fans from all over the country.
Yes, they're real good supporters. Never a grumble, never anything. Never grumble about the tea.
The church hall became a regular stopping-off point, offering tea and sympathy to supporters who've been making the pilgrimage to Roker Park for most of their lives.
Got the cat when I was at the championship dinner in May 1936, And I took it to Wembley with me the next year when I went with the team. And I went to Wembley with the team, and still got it. I've just lost its red and white ribbon. I think the grandchildren have disintegrated that, but otherwise I've kept it.
Footballers too can be a superstitious lot, and it was in the home dressing room that Sunderland's famous Black Cat made its first appearance way back in 1909. The Stray wandered in on the morning of a First Division match with Bury. Sunderland won that game and the next two, and became the very first club to adopt a team mascot, starting a trend that everyone followed. Several generations down the line, and the Black Cat, by now somewhat larger than life, was still crossing the team's path.
This is me uncatted.
Bit hot under there, is it?
Yeah, it's not exactly perfect.
What's it like to actually get out and be on the pitch with the players? Or you...
I mean, that's the only reason I did it. I mean, not many people get the chance to lead the teams out of Roker Park. I mean, that's the only reason I did. I'm a Sunderland fan. I mean, I wanted to lead the teams out of Roker Park, was always my dream. So, I mean, the only way I could do it is be the cat. So, never had the talent, so just wear a cat suit and do the same.
But when you tell people you lead the teams out, do they believe you?
I would say, like, are you the captain? Well, nearly. I'm a guy that dresses up as a cat. Fat bloke in cat costume.
The Sunderland fans were the guys that made me what I was up here, and I can come back here any time, and I feel part of them and they're part of me. It's a fairly unique relationship, really, because I come all the way from London, you know, to come here.
And Hurley gets it in. It's in! Clough finding Mulhall. And Mulhall setting off on a run. Here's a chance! It's in! It's theirs! Charlie Hurley!
I remember when we got promotion in 1964, we did a lap of honour, and then there was a chant went out, Charlie, Charlie, and we had to go out again, so we went round again, and I was shaking hands with big 6'4" miners and shipbuilders crying their eyes out, and I suddenly realised what we'd done.
Roker Park began the 70s staging second division football for only the second time in the club's history, and the fans seemed to take it badly. The team as well struggled to come to terms with its new and unwanted status. In their first season back in the lower division, Sunderland finished an uninspiring 13th. Even though over the next 12 months the position improved to 5th, there seemed an unprecedented sense of apathy about the whole place. When Sunderland beat Swindon in September 1972, there were less than 12,000 in the ground. The club were just not used to that. Eventually, manager Alan Brown paid the usual price. Roker Park was desperate for a lift. When Bob Stoker arrived in December 1972, the club suddenly exploded into life. The new manager had inherited some genuine talent, like striker Billy Hughes.
And there's Hughes, he's got a chance, he should score! And what a start for Sunderland.
Bobby Kerr was a tireless worker in midfield with a genuine attacking flair.
And what a good goal by Kerr. What a good goal by Kerr.
And there was Dennis Chewett, a goal-scoring winger who'd crossed the river from Tyneside.
Hughes didn't realise his luck. Here's the chance for Chewett now, he should! He did!
The timing of Bob's arrival was spot on, because we had a lot of young players on the side, and it was the youngness of the players that caused the problem in the first place when we were relegated. We had probably too many young players. Good players, but not quite fully matured. And when Bob came, the players were ready to mature themselves, but they'd been playing in a system which had a little bit of fear because of the previous year or so where we were struggling. And Bob came in and just allowed us to play. And myself and Billy, you know, Billy Hughes, we needed the freedom, and we enjoyed the freedom.
A few weeks before Bob Stokoe was appointed here, Sunderland were at one of the lowest ebbs that I can recall. And I was having a bit of a go in my newspaper, the Daily Mail. And the director of Sunderland came to me, he says, "You're always saying that this ground could be full and all that sort of thing." He says, "Those days have gone, you know, it isn't as easy as that." I said, "You could not be more wrong." I still believed in the potential there. Weeks later, only weeks later, this ground was packed with the most exciting performance, most memorable occasion most of us can remember here for a replay, a fifth-round replay in the FA Cup with Manchester City. An absolutely fabulous night. And that confirmed what this club's about. And that's why I've always believed that it can rank with the Barcelonas, never mind the Newcastles.
Sunderland against Manchester City, February 27th, 1973, FA Cup fifth-round replay. This was the match Sunderland fans voted as the greatest game ever played at Roker Park.
Well, this is Kerr. That's a good ball. And it's gone in! Tremendous shot! Back out to Kerr. Hughes still trying to find a way through and succeeding! What a superb goal by Hughes! Porterfield, Malone, and plenty of Sunderland players prepared to join the break. Flicked on well for Tuart and put in. Hughes has done it. 3-1.
I think that was the really first time where we felt that we could win the cup. I mean, the quality of the goal and the build-up, not only of the final act of the goal, but the build-up to it and how much movement we had and the quality of the strikes on goal. I think from that on in, I realised that we had a quality side.
It was really the rebirth confirmed. This was what everybody had dreamed of for so long. We wanted to be on the map, and we were proving we could be as good as the best.
Bob Stokoe's unbelievable triumph at Wembley against Leeds gave Sunderland a unique place in FA Cup history. But transforming that success into promotion was tough. Cup stars like Dennis Tuart and Dave Watson left, but new, experienced signings gave the team the means to return to the top flight. In June 1974, two former Magpies arrived at Roker. Brian Pop Robson had left Tyneside for West Ham, but he came back to the North East to become one of Wearside's most consistent goal scorers.
Number 6, Porterfield. Robson, 2. Robson. It's a goal.
Newcastle captain Bob Moncur shocked the North East by leaving after United's cup final defeat to lead the Wearsiders. His international experience certainly showed in defence. At the third full season of trying, Sunderland's Wembley Messiah finally led the club into the promised land of the First Division. There was no second-half slump as in the previous campaign, and Roker form was once again the foundation for success. Once promotion was assured, the championship was wrapped up in style at home to Portsmouth. The glory days were back at Roker Park again.
Bolton. That'll do. That was a goal all the way. 15 minutes of the first half left. The ice has been broken. Sunderland leading 1-0. And here's Train. And it's 2-0. Billy Hughes.
Sadly, and not for the last time in Roker's history, the return to the top flight was painfully short-lived. Sunderland couldn't produce a win in the first 9 games, and probably rather hastily, the cup final hero Bob Stokoe resigned after the team's 3rd successive home defeat. It was 6 weeks before Burnley's Jimmy Adamson was appointed. By that time, Sunderland had 9 points from 16 games. The team also suffered the most incredible goal drought, 10 games without scoring, but it suddenly ended with 4 straight wins, all at Roker Park. The team scored 17 goals and conceded just 1, with the final game in that astonishing sequence against West Ham.
John Radford, the former Arsenal and England star, being beaten by Gary Rowell. And a chance there surely, and it's the first goal, yes, and a beautiful goal scored by Holden. Beaten by Bill Green. Now back comes Sunderland, Rowell again, and he's got the second. Day missing that one, and it's a goal, yes, scored very cheekily by the number 9, Mel Holden. Oh, a bad mistake, now straight to Kerr, and that's 4. And really, can you imagine? And it's another one. And it's Gary Rowell. And that's onside. Now then, Bob Lee with a chance to get number 6. Has he? Yes, he has. And I have never seen anything.
My favourite game at Roker Park was we played West Ham, and it was the year we actually got relegated. We'd started the season, we hadn't played so well, but Jimmy Anderson got the manager's job, and he sort of transformed the team. And this day, everything went right, and we hammered West Ham 6-0. And it was really, you know, it was one of them special games at Roker Park, which a lot of people still remember.
Against all expectations, Adamson's team clawed back the ground with just 2 defeats in 17 matches. When Mel Holden scored the only goal against Birmingham in their final home match, Sunderland were still in with a chance of survival. But it was to prove the last First Division goal Roker would see for 3 long seasons. The final 2 away games saw the Wearsiders relegated. Adamson's rearguard action had been based on giving an extended run to a talented crop of local youngsters. They would have formed the nucleus of the club's rebuilding. In defence, there was Sean Elliott, a quick tackling centre-back from Hayden Bridge in Northumberland, who was strong coming forward. Kevin Arnott was from Bensham on Tyneside. He gave the midfield genuine direction with his instinctive control, impressive vision and the passing ability to deliver the end product. And from Seaham, there was already a true Sunderland hero in the making, Gary Rowell, a sharp, quick, natural goalscorer who became an all-time crowd favourite.
Quickly taken by Rowell. That's 5. And Rowell, 1-1.
To grow up and be a Sunderland supporter and actually to play for the club was you know, something that you dreamed about. It actually happened, and it's something that I've got loads and loads of great memories about, and you just can't take them away. Roker Park is one of the great venues for English football, and to actually run out there and play there was a very, very special time. When there's big crowds and that, you tend not to see individual faces, and you're concentrating so much as well. You can't do that, but you're aware of the passion and the loyalty of the supporters, and you know how much it means to them, that it's, you know, it's important.
It took a couple more managerial changes to win promotion under Ken Knighton. Former 50s favourite Billy Elliott had succeeded Adamson and came close to taking them up. But it was when Elliott handed over to coach Knighton that the goal was finally achieved. Knighton was a comparatively unknown figure, but he gave Sunderland the springboard for a new decade of hope. The final act of the 70s was to mark the club's centenary. Former players made the pilgrimage for the celebration match against an England 11. Not many of them might have expected a return invitation 18 years later, to say farewell to Roker Park itself.
Allen barged off it by Bell. 2 men in the middle waiting for the cross. Lee! Well saved by Montgomery.
It's still with Taylor. And still Taylor goes on. Past Clark. A right foot shot. Oh, and somehow Montgomery got there to push it over.
The team Ken Knighton assembled gave the Roker faithful good reason to welcome the new decade with confidence. They'd very much seen the progress for themselves, as Knighton turned the old ground back into a fortress, where a home win was par for the course. The old campaigner was back again. Pop Robson, a star of the '76 promotion side, returned to Roker and, of course, brought with him his usual bag of goals.
Certainly let in Kevin Arnott. The goal is miles out. Robson. Oh, that's beautifully done by Pop Robson.
And a new attacking star made the journey up the A19 from Teesside for £300,000. Pocket-sized Stan Cummins. His place in Roker folklore was guaranteed when he pounced to dispose of the old enemy.
He's missed it! And Cummins has got it! Stan Cummins scores for Sunderland and breaks the deadlock.
Knighton travelled rather further afield when he set a club record to bring Claudio Marangoni from Argentina. It was a bold move, if not exactly a triumph. The Yorkshire determination of Chris Turner in goal proved a somewhat more dependable foundation for success. As a certain Gary Lineker, among others, found out, Knighton's team didn't give much away. During a 16-game unbeaten run, the Wearsiders conceded just 13 league goals at Roker, scoring 47. Promotion was wrapped up in what would now be regarded as unthinkable circumstances. 9 days after the end of the season, cup winners West Ham came north to provide the opposition as Sunderland chased the 1 point they needed to return to the top flight. These days, every vital game has to kick off at exactly the same time, never mind the same week. Predictably, the game was something less than a fight to the death. Kevin Arnott on hand to put Sunderland on their way. Stan Cummins swayed his way through a lethargic Hammers defence, and the party could really begin. It had been anxious enough for Knighton and assistant Frank Clark on the bench, but the players had soon realised the game was there for the taking.
If I remember right, there's about 5,000 locked out of the game. The atmosphere was tremendous, and they were coming in and they were flying, and we were all a bit nervous about the game, and they had no nerves at all. Phil Parks was having banter with me, oh, which side are you going to put the penalty, and laughing and joking, and what's going on here? But
nobody on Wearside was complaining. If this time the fates had been kind to them, it only balanced the books. After 3 years earlier, that notorious delay at Coventry led to Sunderland going down. The young management team had proved an outstanding success. Much credit went to the number 2, former Newcastle and Forest defender Frank Clark. But it was a great personal triumph for confident Ken Knighton. Roker Park had suffered quite enough relegations. The relief was unbounded. But Sunderland only clung on to their newly acquired First Division status by their fingertips, thanks to the odd moment of inspiration in front of their own fans.
Hawley tries one. Oh, what a goal from Hawley! Unbelievable! Whitworth now. Spare men in the middle. Here's Arnott. Hawley's in the middle. Has he delayed too long? Hawley still wants it, but Arnott still got it. Oh, beautifully done by Kevin Arnott. That really was sheer class.
Another relegation battle, though, cost Knighton and Clark their jobs, as Sunderland only survived thanks to an astonishing win at Anfield on the last day. Sunderland turned to Alan Durban as the next manager. The former Welsh international had been an influential force in Brian Clough's championship side at Derby. He proved a thoughtful yet determined man at the helm, piloting the club through some difficult First Division waters. That generation of Roker fans needed to get used to their annual cliffhanger. Durban's first full season, he needed a last-day goal from Mick Buckley to keep the club one place above the drop. But Durban was trying to build a side based on youth and skill. He paid £300,000 to bring unknown striker Ali McCoist south of the border. History showed Durban's judgment was spot on, even if Wearside never saw the finished product. There was local talent emerging too. Nick Pickering was a gifted left-sided player who won an England cap in 1983, the last man to do so in Sunderland colours. Durban had blooded a Stanley lad called Barry Venison. Even as a teenager, he proved a natural leader. And there was still Gary Rowell in probably his best season. After one win in 15 games, it was Rowell who finally gave the Fulwell Enders something to really cheer.
Gary Rowell now. And that's a goal from Gary Rowell. Denied by Talbot, and he gave it straight back to him. And Rowell could exploit it, and number 2 for Gary Rowell, number 2 for Sunderland. And a fine run there from Pickering into the middle from Gary Rowell. Is this to be his hat-trick? It's the hat-trick for Gary Rowell.
Alan Durban was making progress. Survival achieved with the luxury of a game to spare. Roker Park looked more stable, even with those dreaded candy-striped shirts. One strip that won't go down in Roker history. But Durban's team seemed to find it hard to keep their heads above the relegation waters. By February '84, Sunderland were out of the cup and 16th in the table after 3 points from 7 games. Chairman Tom Cowie had become increasingly uncomfortable with Alan Durban, so he turned to a familiar face. The new man hardly needed a tour of the ground. Len Ashurst had been the mainstay of Sunderland's defence throughout the whole of the 60s. An experienced manager in the lower divisions, he led Cardiff to promotion. Under Ashurst, a final position of 13th belied yet another last-day survival scare. But Roker Park was now looking forward to a 5th successive season in the top flight. However, it was to prove more of the same for the long-suffering fans who had precious little to savour in the league. A First Division local derby against Newcastle had become a rare treat, but a 0-0 draw against Jack Charlton's team came in a run of 6 home games without a Sunderland goal. The club slumped to relegation, 10 points adrift after 3 wins in 5 months. The dismal league form became even harder to take when contrasted with a tremendous cup run. One of the men they had to thank never even made the final of the Football League Cup, or Milk Cup as it was then called. A 22-year-old striker from Wallsend was to miss out. Roker staged the first leg of the semi-final against Chelsea, with Sunderland needing to gain a significant advantage for the return trip. And it was Colin West who provided a 2-goal lead, but he was dropped for the final. That home leg was the high point of the cup run. The second leg's success was overshadowed by horrendous crowd trouble, and Wembley was a big disappointment. Relegation cost Ashurst his job, but every Sunderland fan believed their saviour had arrived when Laurie McMenemy strode into town. It was a triumph for Chairman Tom Cowie. Big Laurie, a genial giant from Gateshead, was the most prized manager in the game at the time. Surely now the sleeping giant would awaken. McMenemy was more than just manager, he was the managing director. But the next 2 seasons were to prove a nightmare for Sunderland fans who already felt they'd suffered enough. Instead of challenging for the First Division, McMenemy's expensively assembled team lived under the constant threat of an unthinkable relegation to the 3rd Division. A run of 1 point from 6 games finally proved too much for even McMenamin's reputation to survive. An inspired appointment had gone horribly wrong. Laurie left in a hurry, knowing he would never be welcomed back. And so the club turned to its most famous manager. Could Bob Stokoe work his magic once again? His team were right in the lurch, 7 games to save the world, or at least Wearside. When Gordon Armstrong scored the only goal of the game against Crystal Palace, it looked as though Stokoe might just pull it off. But 1 point from the last 2 games sent the club into perhaps the most dramatic match and the most disastrous Roker Park has ever witnessed. May 17th, 1987, Black Sunday. The playoffs then included the 3rd bottom team, and Gillingham, 5th in Division 3, came to Roker and within 3 minutes extended a 3-2 lead from the first leg. It was a heart-stopping game. Eric Gates pulled Sunderland level, but still a goal behind overall. The crowd were baying for Sunderland to save their 2nd Division lives, and Gates immediately struck again. 2 in 2 minutes made it 4-4 on aggregate. Sunderland were flying now, and only a handball on the line kept out a header from Dave Swindlehurst. Surely a penalty would put them ahead, but somebody still had to take it. Mark Proctor had put one away in the first leg, but this time couldn't deliver. Not even Bob Stokoe could have seen anything quite like it. But there was another penalty to come, this time when Sunderland keeper Ian Hesford upended Howard Pritchard. Hesford made amends by saving Colin Greenhall's penalty. But a then unknown striker called Tony Cascarino was to haunt Roker. A hat-trick in the first leg, now he put Gillingham back in overall lead. Just 2 minutes to go, and it looked like Sunderland were going under, till up came Gary Bennett to make it 3-2 on the day, 5-5 on aggregate and extra time. You wouldn't have thought more drama was possible, but 3 minutes into the extra period, Cascarino turned in his 5th goal of the tie. Roker Park could hardly take much more. Keith Birching kept hopes alive to level it up at 6-all. But those 3 away goals would take Gillingham through. Sunderland were relegated into the 3rd Division for the first time in their history. Even Bob Stokoe couldn't save the club from the wreckage of the McMenemy era. 1986-87 has to be the worst season out of the 99 years of football at Roker. The irrepressible confidence of Dennis Smith and coach Viv Busby made Sunderland's 1 season in the 3rd Division better than expected. The new manager openly recognised promotion had to be achieved at the first attempt. And 3rd Division or not, the old ground still had the style to impress a new player.
When I went to Roker Park, I hadn't seen it before. It was just awesome. I went through the doors and the stadium was fabulous. And Viv took me all the way around like the trophy room and things like that, and like went on the pitch, and it was like trying to find like a weed. It was just all pure grass. It was just lush and lovely. And as I say, within 5-10 minutes, I had actually signed for Sunderland. It was a great feeling.
Smith's rejuvenated team always led the field. From October onwards, they were in a promotion place. The foundation for the revival was the prolific striking partnership of the experienced Eric Gates and the explosive Marco Gabbiadini. Sunderland had its own G-force.
Bertrand's Gabbiadini turning. Gabbiadini finds the net and Sunderland have taken the lead. And persistence paid off then for Marco Gabbiadini.
When Roker said its farewells to 3rd Division football on May 7th, 1988 against Northampton, at least it did so in style. Promotion had been secured with a couple of games to spare, and the championship was quickly wrapped up. Dennis Smith had restored Sunderland's pride, and he was by no means finished yet. Smith's managerial background at York meant he was not accustomed to buying progress, but buying Gabbiadini from his old club to partner Gates was the blue touch paper for the team's explosive season. Smith and Busby never shirked the challenge they had faced. Roker Park was right back on its feet. The 3rd Division hadn't been quite so bad after all, but once was quite enough.
Thornman's throw. Looking for Kerr, and a good goal! What a beauty! Kerr, here it is, should score, and does.
Robson, Porterfield. In comes Kerr, and it's a beautiful goal.
When you saw the floodlights, heard the roars and joined the crowds heading for Roker, you knew the ground wasn't far away. Once upon a time, no match day was complete without a programme, but Sunderland's top fanzine calls itself a love supreme, and that sums up the relationship with Roker Park.
Probably the most recent great game was Man United this season. There's been loads. I don't think like one springs to mind. When we beat Bolton to go up in '76, that was a great game. When we beat Man City in the Cup in '73, that was a great game. When we beat Chelsea in the Cup with the last-minute winner, that was probably the most exciting. That was like when my pulse rate was out the window. But you know, there's been loads like over the years. You know, loads of. It was a great game when we beat Sheffield United 6-2 midweek to go top of the league and get promoted that year. Too many, really.
For more than 30 years, the fans have had an official voice too. The Sunderland Supporters Association was set up in the mid-60s and quickly became one of the biggest in the country. Leaving Roker would be a wrench for long-time servant George Foster.
I would think my father would bring me here before 1937, and I would think I would be on this corner somehow. You know, because I can imagine just seeing a goal, because he would lift me on his shoulders. I must have only been 7. Being a Seaham Harbour lad, you see, we used to get the auto car, as it was then, from Seaham Harbour Station. And then he'd bring me through here, get on a tram at the museum. They're just the memories I've got of it. Unfortunately for me, instead of putting me down at the front where all the other kids were, he'd put me on his shoulders, and then, of course, his job get tired of that, and then I would hear the U's and the R's and the goals, and that put me off football for a while.
This is what the fans have enjoyed seeing in the past and want to see more of in the future. For the club's directors, the inner sanctum of the Roker boardroom provided a constant reminder of the glory days. This particular piece of silverware came with the 1996 First Division title. A sight to gladden the heart of another North East champion.
I used to say that, you know, I would give it up. I mean, it's very, very difficult, obviously. I mean, any kid, you know, whether you're supporting Sunderland or Newcastle, whatever your team, you want to play for them. But what brought it home to me in later years, when I was doing well on the track and I got to meet quite a few of the players, and a few of them used to pull me to one side and say, "It must be great what you do. I wish I could run in the Olympic Games." And, you know, so the grass is always greener on the other side. But yes, you know, I would have loved to have. I mean, I've played with some of the lads in charity games and things, so I've come close, if you like. But you know, team sport and individual are different. But it's always had obviously a special place in my heart.
Taken by Raul. That's fine. That really was a beautiful goal.
Arnott. Begrudging there. Yes, it's there. Raul again.
Just as at the start of the 80s, Sunderland fans entered a new decade with hope of a return to the top flight. In the end, promotion was achieved without a ball being kicked at Roker Park or anywhere else. The 90s began alarmingly, with 2 wins in the first 11 games. But once they'd rediscovered their form in a thrilling home victory against West Ham, Sunderland made sure they grabbed a playoff place. The playoff semi-final against Newcastle was one of the most dramatic episodes in the club's history. The highly charged first leg at Roker was goalless, but the scenes at a sensational victory on Tyneside echoed throughout Wearside. First Division celebrations took place in midsummer. Dennis Smith had suffered the disappointment of Wembley, but Swindon lost the third promotion place far away from any pitch. Nobody at Roker was complaining. The combative Kevin Ball was bought from Portsmouth. He was to prove the backbone of the final years at Roker. But signings were few and far between when the team so obviously needed strengthening. Sadly, instant relegation was no great shock. Dennis Smith found it desperately hard to stop the slide. He cashed in his master signing Gabbiadini at a massive profit. Half of the £1.8 million fee went on Don Goodman for a new club record buy. Goodman proved a determined front runner. Few characters were more determined than the Sunderland manager, but at the end of the year he lost his job and started a procession of managers. Roker Park could have used revolving doors. Coach Malcolm Crosby stepped up to take temporary charge and launched Sunderland on a revival that took them all the way to an FA Cup final. The new Roker idol was striker John Byrne, who scored in every round up to Wembley. But in the cup euphoria, the team nearly nosedived towards Division 3. Roker Park again had some glory nights to savour, like the quarter-final replay against Chelsea. Gordon Armstrong the hero in a 2-1 victory. Following the Bob Stokoe path earned Crosby the manager's job, but Liverpool on the day of the final were in no mood to do a Leeds, but the league remained a disaster. 8 months later, Crosby was out of a job. The experienced England defender and former Rangers manager Terry Butcher was on the playing staff and a convenient alternative. Sunderland finished 1 point and 1 place above relegation, and it would get no better. November 1993, and a third internal appointment in a row gives Mick Buxton the chance to win back a thoroughly disenchanted Sunderland public. Buxton proved a steady hand, and with some encouraging younger players like Craig Russell emerging, the clouds above Roker were starting to lift a little. But the all-too-familiar gloom was to return the next season. It was a hard time for Fulham Enders, with just 2 wins in the first 14 home games. It was yet another relegation fight, and yet another managerial departure was inevitable. The club's 6th manager in 9 years proved the saviour. Scouser Peter Reid had been an England international who scrapped for every ball. He created a Sunderland spirit in his own style. He was given 7 games to avoid the drop, and he did. A point at home in the final game kept Sunderland up, another last-day nail-biter.
They'll float one across here towards Martin Smith. Beyond Angel, Martin Smith scores! Goal for Sunderland. Martin Smith in the right place at the right time. Now then, Michael Gray. Here is danger again to the West Brom goal. Fine tackle on him. The chance for Phil Gray. It's 2-2. Sunderland score in time added on, and it looks as though they have rescued a point on the final day of the season.
Reid's enthusiasm and organisation turned the whole club around without any extravagant spending. Paul Bracewell was back for a 3rd Roker career. As assistant manager, he carried Reid's philosophy out onto the pitch, with his careful passing the team's hallmark. It was in December '95 that Roker believed the good days might be really back. Top of the table Millwall were demolished, with Russell running riot.
Craig Russell's made a tremendous run. Russell, what a marvellous goal! Craig Russell! Now Phil Gray. Moving it through to Smith, an excellent ball, and Russell's there again! That's another superb goal! Oh, they're walking on water today! Gray turning his man well. Gray getting into the middle, Russell's there! Hat-trick! Craig Russell! Russell looking to turn Thatcher, still with Russell, still Craig Russell, and it's 4 for Russell, 6-0. And this is an absolute pasting for Millwall, and Craig Russell has had the game of his life.
In 13 months since Reid arrived, Sunderland had gone from relegation candidates to First Division champions. No Sunderland captain had ever fought for the cause better than Kevin Ball. Peter Reid was the toast of Roker Park. Sunderland's first taste of the new Premiership was always going to be tough. 11th place at Christmas was too hard to sustain, though an epic victory over champions Manchester United...
Absolutely crazy!
But 3 wins in 4 months meant Sunderland came into their last league game at Roker Park needing a win to keep survival hopes alive. Even such a historic occasion was secondary to the job ahead.
Here's Michael Gray. Looking for Quinn. Appealing for handball against Ferguson. He's given it! Southall's been in this position so many times before. 2 experienced pros here. Here comes Stewart, and he scores! What an important piece of calm authority there from Paul Stewart. Here comes Waddle. What a goal from Chris Waddle! That's a fantastic strike. It's Waddle's first, and it's an absolute blinder. Quinn did well. Here's Waddle, the crossing machine. Another dangerous ball in, and it's a third, and it's Johnston's first as well. And it's Sunderland 3, Everton 0. They're saying goodbye to Roker Park with a real flourish now.
After 99 years of league football, Roker Park was far too proud to end on anything other than a winning note. The club had another last day drama to face at Wimbledon. Not for the first time, the fates were cruel. Relegation again. But at least the grand old stadium itself had been spared that last agony.
I was coming to the end of my career and Marco was just starting it, and you know, he had the legs, I suppose, and I had the brains on the football pitch. You know, I used to just say to him in the dressing room, you know, all I want to see today, Marco, is your backside. You know, all I wanted to see him was running towards goal, and I would play a ball through to him, and that's the only thing we talked about, really. Just let me see your backside, Marco, because he had great pace, didn't he? Lovely pace, and he scored some fantastic goals.
While the clock was running down on Roker Park, the next century of football was starting to take shape on the site of the old Monk Wearmouth colliery. The new stadium is barely a mile away from Roker, and everyone could see the new age very gradually dawning within sight of the city centre. The riverside location hadn't been the first choice site, but there's been absolutely nothing second best about the stadium itself. It will be a 42,000-seater showpiece when complete, an inspiring construction that will help ease the disappointments of leaving good old Roker Park.
It's had nearly 100 years, and it's done the club proud. It's been loved, and it's had its day.
I'll miss it because every time I'm passing along this way, I might have passed along the roadways, or I've seen the floodlights up night when you're in the town, you can see the floodlight. It fetches your memories and all that, so yes, I think we'll miss Roker Park.
Lots of people come and go from football clubs, but the one consistent factor is the crowd. And they are always the people I feel the most sorry for. And also are most pleased for when success comes. And of course this crowd has been something special.
if you asked anybody in the 50s, anybody in the 60s, and probably the centres, what's Roker Park like, they'd tell you one of the best in the country, and it was.
I left Sunderland, I went to Leicester, I went to Mansfield, I went to different clubs. Sunderland, Roker Park itself, has always been Mick Sharkey's home.
It's a new era, and they're going to go to a new stadium, and good luck to them.
New stadium when it opens? Well, what can I say? I've got my seat. I've had it a while. We hope that it turns out as good as this ground.
Just look around, there's nowhere for it to redevelop, you know, and for the club to go forward. It's a big club, as I've said for years. It's a sleeping giant. And you pass a new stadium on your way in, you think, yeah, it's magnificent.
The physical size of the stadium will be gone, flattened, your houses. I just hope that they maintain, you know, something of the fact that there was a football stadium here.
Manchester City, 1973, and Luton in 1973. Definitely the high spots for me. 50 odd thousand here. Roker right at its best.
I was just saying to my son here, you know, I was just saying, take a good look at it, because this is the last time you'll ever see it. We got out the car there for the last time, looked at the floodlights through the houses. As we got closer and closer, it suddenly starts to dawn on us, you know, that this is the last year.
Nobody would want to take away those special memories, but the favourite word around the club to describe the new stadium is awesome. No football fan would turn down the chance to see its team play in a setting like this. A new image will take Sunderland into a new millennium. The hopes for the future will grow from the traditions of the past. The final act for Roker gave many fans the chance to buy their own piece of history. An auction of everything from the seats to the pitch itself. And there were no shortage of takers. Now it will be left to the present Sunderland players to bridge the gap between old ground and new. And those of them brought up on Roker Park will take their personal sense of history and pride.
It's kind of really described how I felt when I first signed for Sunderland. Only like it was a dream come true, and to stand on the terraces here and to watch them, and then really play for them was just unbelievable, really.
My dad brought us down when I was in the Grasshopper, you know, and I used to stand in the Roker end, you know, so it was, you know, the cliche, but it was true because it was a dream come true, and I made my debut, you know, against Southend, which is coming up to 10 years now, so, you know, it's a very important part of my life, you know.
It was no surprise that the great stage for football in Sunderland took a final curtain call with such emotional scenes. Of course, the memories of the past are not all of triumph and victory, but the unequalled spirit of Roker Park represents the true success story. The stands and the terraces all changed, as did the players and the fans, but the atmosphere seemed to transcend the generations. After 99 years, the player of the century had the final word.
I represent the past. The past to me was brilliant. I've got a new hip, I've got a dodgy knee, but I wouldn't have swapped the 60s for anything. Thank you very much.
The centre spot was lifted to be replanted in the new ground as a symbol of those past 99 years. Then the old ground could finally close. Sunderland fans found it hard to believe it could actually happen. But they will surely know the famous Roker roar will move with the times. It always has.